I saw these for the first time the other day in Home Depot, so I thought I'd buy a pack and test them out to see if they're any good. They say 10 times longer life, premium ceramic blend, and the really interesting part is that it says they're washable. I'm not sure why you'd want to wash these, but washing must be better than not washing. I recently tested polypaint stripping discs for the angle grinder against wire wheels, and they made a big difference in getting that paint off quickly, and people seem to enjoy that video. So hopefully this video will help some people as well. Let's get into it. There's a bit of a sales pitch on the packaging. It says 1 equals 10 standard discs. I'm just not really sure what a standard disc is. So I purchased this pack of discs. I'm thinking they don't want to call these standard discs. So if you know what a standard disc is, I'm interested. I'll compare these SandNet discs against the high performance standard discs to see what happens. The SandNet came to $2.50 each, and the high performance standard discs came to $1.07 each, more than twice the price for the SandNet. While I was doing some research for the video, I stumbled across this on the 3M website, and they have a section called Standard Series, and look at what they say about it.
Who focuses on volume over quality and who cannot or does not recognize the value of a premium or advanced product.
Now this isn't a hook and loop, and these may end up being cheaper, but they are 75 cents per piece, and that brings it to 3 times the price of a standard disc for the SandNet. These SandNet discs remind me of a newer style of drywall sandpaper, if you can call it paper, and if you can call it sand, because it doesn't include either. I've used these for drywall, and they're actually pretty good at removing a lot of material quickly, but I don't find that they're that good for finishing because they leave a pattern. I took a look on the Diablo website, and I noticed that they also sell sheets of this product for hand sanding. Here are the test samples I have. We have MDF, which isn't normally something you'd want to sand too much. It's made up of sawdust, wax, and resins. Solid white pine, which is a very soft wood in the areas that are clear of knots. It can be pitchy and hard to sand, and it's going to have quite a bit of variation from board to board. Solid Douglas fir, with hard and soft grain, and can also be a little bit pitchy as well. I'm curious about a few main things: how fast these are going to cut, how long will they last, and how does it handle sawdust? Is it any better? If you're curious about swirl marks as well, I have some tips for you near the end of the video. Also, if you'd like to help support this channel so I can create more content like this, make sure you subscribe and give a thumbs up. You could also support me on Patreon, and the link is in the description below. I do have a bit of a problem though. The SandNet comes with these high performance pads, and I prefer not to use it for these tests. This is just a guess, but I think they've included it because unlike a standard disc, this product has abrasive which can contact the Velcro hooks. I'd imagine that over time it would wear them down. The standard disc would never do this. I'm fairly confident that this is why, and for that reason, I'll use the included pad in these tests. Alright, let's find out which one of these cuts the fastest. I'll do a 5-minute sand on each board and measure the thickness difference. These boards are 16 inches long and 4 inches wide, and to keep it as accurate as possible, I'm using the same board and replaning the surfaces down to start fresh for each test. For the MDF, I'll use a new piece since it's very consistent already. To make sure that everything is even, I'm using just the weight of my hand and arm and no extra force. I'll see how much sawdust is inside the sander, as well as compare the material removed by each to see which one wins and by how much. Between each new material, I'll clean the dust collector bin and the filter with the air compressor. For the high performance standard disc, it handled all the materials with ease, including the MDF. Even after 5 minutes of each material, the disc still has quite a lot of sharp abrasive left on it and no noticeable wear. There was a small amount of dust buildup while sanding pine. For the SandNet disc, it also handled these woods with no problem. By sound and feel, it didn't seem to be cutting as much as the high performance standard disc, but it's a little bit hard to tell with no extra pressure being added. I'm not sure the amount of dust in the filter is going to be ideal to compare. There's just so much dust everywhere. It did seem to capture a little less dust for the SandNet than the high performance standard. As for the amount of material removed, both were very close. However, the high performance standard outperformed the SandNet with MDF. The other two results were nearly identical. Let's try and wear these out. I've set this up for testing, and ideally I don't have to hold the sander the entire time. My plan is to let it work on its own for 20 minutes with the vacuum on, and then I'll put some hand pressure on with no vacuum and see how long it lasts until it starts to cut slow enough to justify changing the sandpaper. This test is going to be hard on the sandpaper because we're going to get some heat buildup. After 20 minutes of this running, I'll switch over by hand, and stick around to the end of the video to see what happened in my first test. I was able to get 20 minutes of automatic setup and 14 minutes by hand. This paper still has some bite left in it, but you can see where it overheated in the center and lost all of the abrasive. And this is the amount of material removed, which is pretty good. Let's do the same for the SandNet, 20 minutes of automatic, and then switch over to finish it off by hand. Now this is made from nylon, which is heat resistant to temperatures above 150 degrees Celsius. It should perform better under these conditions. After the initial test, it seemed like it's removing material slower than the high performance standard disc. I'll continue on to see if I can match the time on the first sandpaper and how it holds up. Okay, I've matched the amount of time and it does seem like this is going to last. I can still feel that it has some bite left in it, and there's no indication yet that it's close to being finished. I'll continue on for a bit longer and apply more pressure and see how it holds up with more pressure and more heat. While I can say for certain that this performs better over the long term and where heat buildup is a problem, I'll give this a wash and see how it cleans up. Yep, it still has some bite left in it and really doesn't look that bad. Both discs performed well and removed a respectable amount of material. The high performance standard collected slightly more dust within the sander. However, both discs sent loads of sawdust everywhere in my shop. The SandNet will last longer under the right conditions, and I'm impressed that even though it doesn't have as much area for abrasive on the cutting plane, that it performs so well. As for me, I'm going to try these new style out for a little while. I have a lot of sanding to do. If you have some experience with these, let us know what you thought about them in the comments. It also seems like there's some opportunity to have even better dust collection since it's so open. So if you have a problem with swirl marks showing in your finish, there is one main cause, and that is pressure. We all have a tendency to apply too much pressure when sanding is slow. Doing this is going to prevent the sander from operating correctly, and it's going to lead to gouges in the wood, causing those swirl marks. The way to do it is a light uniform pressure, letting the sander do the work. And finishing off with 120 grit or above will give a nice final product, even with dark stain on white pine. So what happens when you leave your orbital sander unattended? It ends up orbital sanding the ground. And what a nice job it did getting that grass right down to the soil. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe and like, and we'll see you on the next one.